Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 8 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out Barry Vehicles. Call at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycullen.com as well. I am glad to be back. This weekend, I had some issues with my Bell internet and cable, and we're hoping we'll get through this show without any issues. So I'm looking forward to my guest today. This is his, I believe, his fourth time coming on my show, and his name is Rick Zamperin. He's the host of Good Morning Hamilton weekdays from 5:30 to 9 o'clock on CHML 900 in Hamilton, Ontario. And look forward to speaking to Rick about the 2023 Hamilton Tiger Cats and their opening game this Friday, I believe June 9th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. I've had a stressful week, and I've had some issues with my internet and cable, and crossing my fingers, it's been fixed.
Yeah, welcome to the club. We're working from home sometimes. It is a challenge, but we're here and we're talking football. So raring to go.
You must be excited. And I was going to say, Rick, what were your thoughts of the Hamilton Tiger Cats training camp and their two preseason games against, obviously, the Toronto Argonauts and the Montreal Alouettes?
Yeah, in terms of camp, I mean, nothing really different and nothing really to write home about in terms of, oohs and ahs. I thought, the quarterbacks essentially were good. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell in training camp because, you're measuring how they're executing the playbook. And while, yeah, you want to complete some passes or, make some good run plays, it's not really the same as a real game or even an exhibition game. And so what at least I gleaned from this Ticats team from their game against the Argonauts a couple of weeks ago and against Montreal this past Friday was that there were some pretty good takeaways, and two very different games because there were two very different teams on the field. In the Toronto game at Tim Hortons Field, Hamilton really fielded an A1 kind of lineup. A lot of the guys that started the game and played at least a couple of series on offense and defense were a lot of the guys that I think everyone expects to be the starters and or the stars of this 2023 Tiger Cats team. So I think that was a pretty good indication of what they could potentially do all season long, especially on offense. That second drive with Bo Levi Mitchell marching down the field, being very precise, being very methodical, getting a great offensive line play, using a couple of different receivers, throwing a touchdown to culminate that drive. They're all pluses. And even really with the defense, that game was 17-0 at halftime. I thought the Ticats D, the first flighters, if you will, the starters, played very well, pressured the quarterback, made some disruptive plays. Secondary play was good, forced a couple of turnovers. The Montreal game, very different. I think that was a true test or a tryout for a lot of the bubble guys, a lot of the guys who were kind of, on the fence in terms of whether they were going to either make the active roster or even the practice roster. And it was a roster that was filled with hopefuls, that guys who, if they could put in another good performance on top of what they did at training camp, maybe they could make this team. So two very different games, but overall, I think this team is primed for a very good regular season. And, who knows, come playoff time, if they're hosting the East Final, they're one step away from the Grey Cup. But there's a long way to go between now and then. But so far, so good, I think, is the mantra of this Ticats team coming out of camp.
All right, I was going to ask you this later, but I'll do it now since I have you on, Rick. Thoughts on getting Bo Levi on Mitchell, bringing in Chris Edwards from the Argonauts, and bringing back Garrett Davis from the Argonauts?
Well, I'll go in order. Bo Levi Mitchell. I mean, what more can you say about a guy who is a two-time Grey Cup champion, a two-time Grey Cup MVP, a two-time most outstanding player in the Canadian Football League, a guy who's pretty much done everything in this league in terms of winning trophies, winning awards, being an all-star at his position, being the guy with the face of the franchise, handling a team as one of the team leaders, and he did all of that for 10 seasons in Calgary. And really the last 2 plus, maybe 3 seasons, he battled injuries. He was in and out of the lineup because of those injuries. And even last season with, Calgary kind of transitioning into the Jake Mayer era, Bo Levi wasn't the guy anymore. And I thought, at least from the outside looking in, that he handled that well. I'm sure there were some discussions, behind the scenes that he wanted to play a little bit more, and we eventually got to see that in the final playoff game. But at the end of the day, a true professional who really has all the physical tools to continue to be an elite passer in this league. I mean, I say he's only 33 because you compare him to guys who were really effective in their later years as well. Anthony Calvillo comes to mind, Damon Allen, Danny McManus, into his, early to mid 30s, still a very effective passer who can, throw the rock downfield and get some wins. So I look at him as being, a guy that can really move the needle here in Hamilton, a team that really hasn't had a franchise quarterback probably since a DMAC. You can go through the list of guys who came here with a lot of promise and didn't really, propel this team forward. Henry Burris is probably the closest thing, who got them to the Grey Cup but just couldn't win the thing. When it comes to, Chris Edwards, I think this guy is going to fit in nicely. And we're kind of already seeing at training camp, because you have 2 other linebackers that are active, they're vocal, they're hungry to get the football. They don't make many mistakes. And I'm talking about Simone Lawrence and newcomer Jameer Thurman, who's already had a heck of a career in the Canadian Football League, primarily with Calgary. But those 3 linebackers, I really like. I mean, they're physical, they're fast, they can cover the field, they're emotional guys. This is really the heartbeat of the defense, especially when you throw Simone into the mix. And really the leaders of this defensive core that can, I think, maybe push this D unit into one of the top 2 or top 3 in the Canadian Football League. And the third person you asked about, I don't. It's slipping my mind.
Davis.
Oh yeah, Garrett Davis. Yes. Well, how could I forget about him? I guess the Ticats are going to the Grey Cup because all this guy does is go to the Grey Cup. 6 years in a row with 3 different teams. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. So I don't know. We'll see. This player is phenomenal. He can flick on a switch, be a menace, be a power on that D line, take on double teams, still get to the quarterback. Can, as we've seen, play in coverage as well. I mean, he can do it all. And a guy who has a great attitude when he's on the field, that he's helping his fellow teammates. He is just in it to win it. So, yeah, we'll see if the streak continues come November 19th.
I think Hank Alisic has the record of going to the most consecutive Grey Cups. I believe he went to 7 straight Grey Cups.
Wow.
I'll have to Google that.
But
I was going to say, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's impressive. I mean, it takes a little luck to do that, because, and especially with Jaguar's case, that, he's moving from team to team, as I mentioned, 3 teams, and he's still going to the final. So whatever team he's on, he's making an impact, obviously. But that team has also got some talent, whether it's, Toronto last year, Calgary before his stint with Hamilton. There's always been that talent around him. It's not this one guy leading the team to the Grey Cup. He's been a big factor of it. But for him, it must just be an unbelievable feeling that, wow, I'm here again. And I hope, but I probably know that he's not really taking it for granted, because it's not like he's 23 anymore. He's on toward closer to the end of his career than the beginning of his career. So I really get the sense that obviously there's a little luck involved, but there's a lot of talent as well in that case. So it'll be fun to see how how this season comes to an end.
What is the overall mood in the city of Hamilton with the fans and the medias about this 2023 Hamilton Tiger Cats team so far?
Well, I think the mood is very similar to what it has been for, geez, almost 2 decades, really. I mean, Bob Young purchased this team in October of 2003. And at that time, they had a 5-year plan to get to and win the Grey Cup, or at least build a Grey Cup contending team. Now, by 2008, that really didn't materialize to the point that they wanted to, but 5 years after that, they finally made it to the Grey Cup in 2013. Ran into a buzzsaw of the Saskatchewan Roughriders at Old Mosaic Stadium. Got back to the big game again, and then lost to Calgary at BC Place Stadium. And it's been there a couple of times, unfortunately losing to Winnipeg in back-to-back years. But the feeling is, and it has been this way for several years now, is this team, this franchise is and has proven to be good enough to get to the game. Can they win the final game of the season, being the Grey Cup? And there's a little bit of anger, there's a little bit of frustration, there's some anxiousness, there's some excitement as well, in terms of this team potentially being that one to do what hasn't been done since 1999 and end the Canadian Football League's longest active Grey Cup drought. So I think overall, hope springs eternal, especially at springtime in the Canadian Football League, that, if this team gets off to a good start, that's only going to build on the excitement. But there's a lot of people believing that, with Bo Levi at the helm and some other pieces in place, including a revamped kind of offensive line, new running back, some new weapons on offense, and some new defensive backs, that this could be the team that finally, gets over the hump.
Do you feel that the Orlando Steinhauer and some of the coaches could be on the hot seat if this team doesn't win a Grey Cup this year? Because I'm assuming they want to get that drought over, and they've made some additions too. I guess Jeff Reinbold is back, and they brought in the former Argo coach and Grey Cup champion in 12, Scott Milanovic. Sorry.
Yeah, coaches. I think coaches are always.
But just thoughts on this coaching staff overall.
Yeah, I think coaches are always on the hot seat. I mean, that's just the nature of the job. They're sadly hired to be fired, and football isn't alone in that. That you can go down the list of sports where coaches are hired, and when things don't go well, they get tossed. I think this staff and this head coach in particular, I don't think we're anywhere near that kind of category. This head coach in Orlando Steinhauer has built a franchise and a brand of experience, of togetherness, of team first, and he's really built that through his experiences as a player and as a coordinator or an assistant over the years. And when you look at the other coaches on staff, whether it's Tommy Condell, an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator Mark Washington, Jeff Reinbold, as you mentioned, coming back as special teams coordinator, Scott Milanovic, who's an offensive assistant, guys who've been in this league for years at various different positions, whether it's head coaching, coordinating, assistant coaching, and they've been together for a few years, so they know how to press each other's buttons, what lineup is going to ultimately work for them. I think they're all on the same page. And the one kind of underlying factor this year that might be different from last year or even in past years is that they're hosting the Grey Cup. And I think whenever a team is hosting a Grey Cup, there's an expectation that they're going all in, that they're going to do whatever it takes to win this game because it's in their backyard. They want to at least play in the game. Last year, Saskatchewan desperately wanted to play in the game. They just weren't good enough to get there. This Ticats team is good enough to get there. And at the end of the day, the coaching staff, I think, has enough talent on the field to make it work. No guarantee that they're going to get there or even win the thing. But they're all focused on the same thing. So, if this team starts out I don't know, 1-4. I don't think anyone's pressing the panic button. I don't think anyone's saying, all right, we got to make some coaching changes. There's always going to be fans out there that say, yeah, I told you so. We have to make this change. I just don't see that happening at this point in time.
One thing I've seen right now, obviously, with Hamilton and now Toronto, since Pinball Clements has come back, their stability in now Toronto has it as well. And
You're just breaking up a little bit. I didn't catch that complete question. Chris, I don't know if you're still with me, but you're frozen. I am not.
Rick Zamperin back on, and I think he is. I apologize, Rick. Oh, I think I lost Rick. Okay, guys, bear with us. Rick was just getting into about the Hamilton Tiger Cats, the expectations for the team this year, and we were just getting into the coaching staff and the additions of Scott Melovich and Jeff Reinbolt to this team, as well as Mark Washington and Tommy Condell and Orlando Steinhauer, who's been the head coach of the team for a while now and president of football operations as well. The Tiger Cats this year did add Bo Levi Mitchell from Calgary, Chris Edwards, and Jagarrett Davis. Just bear with us, guys. I apologize, everybody, for watching on live stream and my audio platforms for the Wi-Fi issues. So just bear with me. Hi, Rick. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Hey, that's okay. Yeah, I just got you froze and I got bumped off, but I'm back.
Okay, yeah, and that does happen. And like I said, hopefully we can get through the rest of the show without any more technical glitches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was just talking about the coaching staff, and your question is, is anyone on the hot seat? And my summary was everyone is in any kind of coaching position, but I don't get the sense that this coaching staff is, even if they start off a little slow. I think they'll be fine. I'll be here for the entire season. Knock on wood.
From what I've seen in the preseason, obviously, I think Toronto's still going to be a contender. I think Hamilton's going to be much improved this year. I think Ottawa might surprise some people. Montreal, obviously, they got new ownership there. But Rick, what's your overall thoughts on this Eastern Division of the CFL going into the 23 season?
You know what? I'm really intrigued by this division. I know the West has stolen a lot of the headlines in the past, and rightfully so. They've had some excellent teams, whether it's Winnipeg or Calgary for a long, long time. Saskatchewan's kind of been up and down a little bit. BC was very exciting last year with Nathan Rourke. Edmonton kind of struggling, but they should be a little bit improved, I would think. In the East, there's a lot of intangibles here. There's a lot of question marks and unknowns. You look at this Ticats team, and I think anyone on the outside of the cities might be thinking, is Bo Levi going to be the guy? Is he going to be healthy enough? And that's a legitimate question given his injury history. But by all accounts, he's looked fine. He says he's healthy and doing well and feeling good, and throwing the rock around. So that's all a good sign. When it comes to Toronto, I think that here's a championship caliber defense that's back on the field, and might have a little bit of different pieces here or there, but at the end of the day, well-coached team, a team that still has some weapons on offense as well. But again, the one question mark is, can Chad Kelly be that guy? Can he be game in and game out for 18 games and playoff games, a guy who can be a difference maker? We saw it a little bit in the Grey Cup in a couple of really important plays, and without those plays, they probably don't win that game. And then you go to a team like Ottawa, who has been kind of that team where you expect, okay, this is the year that they kind of bounce back and put a few more wins in the win column, and hasn't really materialized. Quarterbacking issues have been a huge concern. I should say quarterbacking injuries have been a real concern. Obviously, Jeremiah Masoli, by all accounts, not yet 100%, but I think when he does, Ottawa fans are going to love what he brings to the table. And Montreal, I mean, even though, there's new ownership and they They are kind of rebuilding. And I know Cody Fajardo, moving from Saskatchewan to Montreal, that's going to be maybe a little bit of a pick-me-up for the new guys who are there. That's a team who I would suspect is going to be, challenging Ottawa for that third place position. I really like Hamilton at the end of the year to be in first in this division, Toronto to be a close second, and then probably Ottawa, Montreal. That's how I kind of see the East playing out. But as we know, I mean, geez, in the Canadian Football League's nothing guaranteed. There's always a surprise or two, whether it's a team kind of disappointing its fan base or one really surprising its fan base. So it's going to be an interesting season for sure.
Absolutely. That leads to my next question I wanted to ask you before we get into the CFL West. What kind
Mhm.
of an identity do you see this 2023 Hamilton Tiger Cats team having?
I think the identity is this is almost like an entire season long business trip. I think they're going to be a serious team on a mission, and whether that is an identity, I think when we think of identity, we think of here's a lunch pail kind of team, a hardworking team, or a team that is high flying and high octane and has all these tricks and its offensive playbook and can really wow you. I think it has all of those components in it. I think it's got a really good defense. I think it has an offense that has the potential to be what we've seen from high point percentage kind of offenses. And I think special teams, with Jeff Reinbold back in the fold, and Lawrence Woods the third returning kicks again and punts, and a real dangerous guy doing that. This is a team that has a mission, and that is to get to the Grey Cup and win the Grey Cup. And I don't think they're going to be looking forward or backward. I think this is truly going to be, and I know it sounds cliche, but one game at a time. And they can't look to the next opponent if they haven't faced the one that they're currently staring at the schedule. So I really get the sense that this team is all in a number of ways, with the offseason moves they've made, with the mentality that they have, with the identity they're trying to form. And it's great to have a kind of a picture of an identity or a mission statement. But throughout the season, there are going to be some ups and downs. I think the end goal is the same for every team. They want to win the trophy at the end, and you kind of morph and tweak that kind of mentality. But at the end of the day, the goal remains the same. So I'm looking forward to how those in season kind of adjustments are made. But this team, as I said, business like, all in. Those are kind of the identity touch points that I'm looking at.
And the one X factor, this goes to all the CFL teams in football, is the injury factor. And this is why it's so important to have good depth, because it's always going to be a next man up mentality through an 18-game season.
Yeah, and you know what? This Ticats team has been through the ringer when it comes to injuries, and last season, seasons before, even this training camp, they have already 4 guys on the 6-game injured list. With it's unfortunate for them. They have another. What we all thought may have been an impactful player in Justin McGriff, a rookie who's come to the CFL, a big target with a big wingspan and a pretty decent catch radius. Goes down with an off-field injury that can be considered, one of those freak accidents that are non-football related. And he'll be missed. We just don't know what kind of potential and what kind of promise he was going to show, or he is going to show in future years. But yeah, the team that has the least amount of injuries and can field most of its starting unit on offense and defense week in and week out is probably the 1 or 2 teams that are going to be in that first or second position in each of their divisions. Health is a huge part of a winning football team, and if you don't have it, it's kind of a patchwork. You're plugging in guys, you're elevating others, you're plucking guys off the practice roster if need be. It's tough sledding, for the players, for the front office, for the coaching staff to kind of mix and match all these, different scenarios. Every team goes through it. Some teams go through it more than others with, a raft of injuries. Let's hope that the Ticats can be relatively injury-free throughout this season. I know that's pie in the sky thinking, but if they can be, they'll be fun to watch for sure. I mean, regardless, they'll be fun to watch, but they could pile up a number of victories even before Labor Day. I was looking at the schedule thinking, if things kind of go their way, this team by Labor Day could be like 8-3. And that might be a little bit more ambitious than most, but they have the potential to do that if things bounce their way.
Now, obviously, Bo Levi Mitchell is number 1. Who's going to be quarterback number 2 and number 3 on this roster?
Well, number two, I think, is easy. Matt Schiltz is the
Yeah.
guy. He, even proved in the exhibition game against Montreal. He's, a really stout kind of quarterback who is not a bona fide starter. I mean, he was a free agent in the offseason, and he could have gone to any team and be the starter, but I'm not sure that every team was kind of sold on him being the guy. He got a little bit of that in Montreal before he came to Hamilton, but he's a really great second fiddle to Bo Levi for sure. I mean, he's a different kind of quarterback. He's a great runner, as we saw against the Alouettes, at ripping off a 51-yard scamper, and a guy who has a pretty nifty touch too, especially in the red zone. So he's definitely number two. The number three scenario is going to be interesting because I'm not 100% sure on the status of Jamie Newman. I know he's on the suspended list. He's a guy that showed a little bit of promise last year when he did come in. But this Taylor Powell kid, had an okay spring. I mean, it wasn't perfect. He had a couple of turnovers, but, from the positive sense, he seemed to understand the game plan. He didn't seem to be like a deer in the headlights kind of quarterback, which we see from many Americans who come up here and kind of get bewildered at the extra man on defense and the waggle and the yard off the ball and all that kind of stuff, the bigger, wider field. But he seemed to be prepared, and he executed for the most part. The turnover issues were certainly an issue, and the coaching staff will have to coach him up to, make sure he's making the right decisions. And for the most part, he has been. But those big mistakes come back to haunt you, especially if the opposition gets those turnovers, scores points off those turnovers. It makes for a very different ball game during the regular season.
And just quick thoughts on Dane Evans and his time in Hamilton.
I thought Dane was a great guy. He is a great guy, really. I mean, he's a team player. Never one to throw someone under the bus when things aren't going well. Always willing to point to himself to say, "Hey, I got to get better," and I'm the leader of the team, and it's on me. And he was carrying that message throughout the season last year, and what was a very difficult start, middle, and end. Really, I mean, it wasn't a perfect season by any means. And let's not forget, here's a guy who was thrust into the spotlight back in 2019 when Jeremiah Masoli goes down and has an ACL injury that proves him rules him out for the rest of the season. Dane comes in. We're all not quite sure what this guy's going to do, and he guides the team to, I think he went 11-2 for the rest of the way or something like that, and guides the team to an all-time franchise best 15-3 record. And I'm thinking, wow, this could be the next franchise kind of quarterback. And you know what? Rightfully so. The Ticats kind of thought that as well and gave him, a raise and the starting mantle. And it just didn't materialize in terms of wins and losses, and especially last year with the turnovers, especially out of the gate, put themselves in a hole, and it just could not recapture the form that he had a couple of seasons prior. But he's going to go to BC and battle Vernon Adams Jr. for that starting job. We'll push him, I am sure, and when he is called upon to make some throws, he'll be dishing it. He's got a lot of talent, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in those BC Lions colors.
Okay. And speaking of the West, I just got a couple more questions for you, Rick.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on the CFL West division for 2023? And are the Winnipeg Blue Bombers still the team to beat out of the West and possibly the CFLs as well?
Yeah, you know what, the West has, as I mentioned earlier, has been a beast for a few years, and this year I think it's going to be a beast in a different sense. Yes, I do think Winnipeg is still the team to beat. They have so many returning starters. They have so much talent on that roster. One of the best coach teams in the league. One of the best run teams in the Canadian Football League in terms of the front office. The fan base is obviously very passionate, but they have a lot of talent on the field, and they have so many different weapons on offense, defense, and special teams, and a team that just, they can get behind and they feel the same as when they're up in the ball game. There's no real mental kind of shift going on throughout the game. They are so business-like, kind of like where the Ticats want to get to this year with their identity. And Winnipeg has been there, 3 straight Grey Cup appearances. They won back-to-back, obviously, before losing last year in a game that they could have easily, three-peated, but, obviously didn't get the job done, and Toronto did. But yeah, Winnipeg they're the beast of the beastest division in the CFL, and they should be, number one once again, unless, again, the injury bug comes to bite them, but they've been relatively healthy over the last couple seasons. Calgary's still solid. Saskatchewan is going to be interesting with Trevor Harris at the helm. Like what they've done. They had to do a lot of work in the offseason, especially on the offensive line. The question is going to be, did they do enough? BC, I see them being in the mix. The Adams Jr. and Dane Evans QB combo. I'm enthralled to see how that works, but I think they got a ton of potential, both on offense and defense as well. And you know what? A team like Edmonton, even with Taylor Cornelius at quarterback, I know he's had a pretty good camp. Can he replicate that in the regular season? And can the new additions that they've made to their offense be as explosive as they have been? The short answer is probably yeah, because they are talented guys, but are they going to be able to mesh with their teammates relatively quickly? Can they get off to a good start? Heck, can Edmonton win at home? I mean, is that going to happen this year? Because it didn't happen last year, and they've been on a long home losing streak. So a lot of good teams in the West. And I'm not exactly sure of the order past Winnipeg. If I were to hazard a guess, Winnipeg, Calgary, BC, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, but I mean, there's no guarantee. There could be a surprise or two in the West, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, and like we brought this up earlier too, the teams that are most successful long term are the ones that have the same GM and same coaching staff. And look at the Calgary Stampeders model of consistency. Hamilton, even being an Argonaut fan, Hamilton has been fairly consistent the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Pinball Clements is trying to do with the Argonauts too. It's not just win a Grey Cup, but to have long-term success as a franchise as well.
That's important. That's hugely important for a number of reasons. Number one, you know what your team identity is, because those coaches, the coaching staff kind of sets the table of, expectations, and this is how we are going to play, and this is what we're going to be, made of. And obviously, the front office has to be a big participant in that, because they're hiring these guys and or have to buy into what the coach and in Hamilton's case, the president of football operations, Orlando Steinauer, has to, entail in terms of how he wants to compile his roster. And that, not only that experience, but that stableness in the front office and the coaching staff, having guys who are there for a few years in a row, which Hamilton has had, is massive for the reason that when you're a free agent, you know what you're getting into. You can look at a team like, Montreal, for example, with Jason Moss as the head coach, who, he's been the head coach in this league before. But, if you're a free agent, are you thinking, geez, I can go to Hamilton. I know they have a stable ownership, a stable coaching staff. They've been challenging for the last couple of years. They've been to a couple of Grey Cups. Or, I can go to Montreal, new ownership. They got a new head coach. I'm not exactly sure of the talent level. They might think twice about doing that. And then you're looking at teams like Edmonton, or teams like Winnipeg, I should say, who are, when's the last time they made any sort of massive change to their roster or their front office or coaching staff? It's been relatively rare. And, because they've been successful, why change something that is working? So yeah, having stability in the coaching ranks and in the front office is absolutely massive.
Okay. Rick, you got time for a few more questions?
Yeah, let's go.
You okay? Okay. This one I wanted to ask you. And I forgot to do this with Amy Lawrence. I had her on the other day from CBS Sports Radio.
I'm a big fan of hers.
Your thoughts on the yes, she does a great job. And I forgot to ask her about this, but what are your thoughts, Rick, on the CFL having more games in the States on ESPN, I guess 2 or 3, and the games are now going to be on CBS Sports Radio?
Yeah, this is huge. I mean, this is spreading the word, spreading the gospel. If you're a religious person, because the more people who are consuming this product, the greater chance that those people will become fans or become more interested in the product that you are advertising, publicizing, trying to get their eyeballs on. Because there's so many different things we could be watching or doing, even outside the sports world. I mean, you could be watching a football game one day, and the next day you're watching something on a streaming service, or you're doing something else connected with entertainment. At the end of the day, this is more eyeballs on the Canadian Football League product, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I know it's not perfect, and all the games are on all the channels, are available to all, but it's a start, and sometimes you gotta take some baby steps before you unleash a grander plan, if there is such a thing with the Canadian Football League and U.S. fan bases. But yeah, more publicity is not a bad thing at all.
Absolutely. And even Jim Nance, I'm not a golf fan, but Jim Nance was calling golf the other day, and he brought up the CFL on CBS Sports Radio, and I thought that was great as well.
And there's the cross promo that you wouldn't get otherwise. If these games are not on CBS, Jim Nance is not mentioning it in a golf broadcast or telecast. And we know that there's a lot of sports fans who watch many different sports, whether it's football and golf and basketball and hockey, and those cross promos are huge in the broadcasting industry. So yeah, good on the CFL for branching out their product.
Absolutely. And also live streaming too. I think the CFL is finally now doing some live streaming as well.
They did so in the preseason. Yeah, a couple of games, at least one for Hamilton was on, the CFL Plus stream or CFL live stream, and otherwise it wouldn't have been on or available to anyone other than going to the stadium, which is great. We want people to go to the stadium, but sometimes, especially during the summer when it's busy, you might be up at the cottage, you can still consume the CFL product. And I think that's important.
As for the Tiger Cats audio network, is it still going to be RJ and Luke and the same cast as last year? And obviously yourself hosting the fifth quarter?
Yeah, Ticats Audio Network is back in terms of all the merry cast of characters. Whether it's you mentioned a couple of guys: R.J. Broadhead, Luke Tasker, Andy Fantuz, Bubba O'Neill, Courtney Stephen, Mike Daly. A lot of the former players: Rob Hitchcock, Mike Morreale, involved in some of their audio stuff. On game days, yeah, it's Ticats pregame. We have the game on 900 CHML. I host the fifth quarter after the broadcast and talk to fans about what they think of the particular game. They vote for the player of the game. Some of them are anointed, if they're lucky enough, the fan of the night throughout the season. And yeah, we have a lot of fun talking Ticats football. And sometimes we're crying in our beer, and other times we are celebrating and offering a cheers to our fellow fans.
Absolutely. And as much as I love the NFL too, Rick, the CFL has been so great, especially the Toronto Argonauts. As you know, they had their camp in Guelph, and Chris
Mhm.
Belnovich, who's the manager of media relations, was allowing me to go there to do some player interviews, get to know the guys. And I'm going to say this, Rick. Obviously, you got way more experience than me, but it's one thing to be a fan of a team, but you also get a different perspective when you're a media member as well, which I can now give to my friends.
Absolutely. And you know what? The CFL, more than any pro sports league that I've covered, and I've covered a few, I'll give them this. Number one, it's the most accessible in terms of players being in the community. I think the NFL has done a wonderful job in doing this in terms of their, Play 60 initiatives, um, kick, punt, pass, being in the community with volunteering and raising funds for great causes. The CFL's been right there for ages in terms of raising money for charities, going into schools to read books for kids, hanging out after practice, signing autographs, during training camp, after the games. It is such an accessible league in terms of that fan player connection. That's why it's so great. And yeah, you got a taste of it as a media member during training camp, and just seeing some of the things that the normal fan won't see in terms of how these guys prepare, how they tape up their bodies, some of the things when they're injured and on the sidelines, what goes on, what's the relationship between coach and players, how are they scheming for a particular game, what kind of offensive or defensive game plan are they installing for a particular week. So all that behind the scenes stuff we get access to, and we have the job of relaying that to the listener or the viewer or the reader, to inform them of how their favorite team is kind of preparing week in and week out.
And also getting to know them as human beings as well, outside the game as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we watch games or we listen to games, and sometimes we're a little too critical on their performance, especially if they have a bad game. So and so, trade this guy or bench this guy, or do something, put them on the practice roster. But at the end of the day, they're just humans. We put them on the pedestal because we like to be entertained. They entertain us, so we kind of vault them onto this pedestal. But at the end of the day, they're just regular human beings. This is their job. Their job happens to be a game, which is very much a business, let's not forget. And they have a specific set of duties when we're talking football players. And if they don't do those duties, there is a punishment for not performing up to snuff. And some of that punishment is being benched, or, yeah, getting put on the practice roster, or getting traded or released. It's a very cutthroat business. And at the end of the day, those players know that. They've been it for, many of them have been in it for years, and they've seen it and done that. And in some cases, they get paid handsomely, not to the extent of what happens in the National Football League. But, you look at a starting quarterback for, let's say, the Hamilton Tiger Cats, you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. there are many positions in the regular work field that you're not making hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, in retrospect, again, these guys are humans. They have bad days at the office. They have amazing days at the office, just like anyone else. And week in, week out, we get to cheer them. It's the big difference is no one is coming to your work, Chris, and cheering or booing you, because they don't care how your workday goes. When we go to the football field, we definitely care on how they perform, and that's why they get paid.
Absolutely. And also, Mike Pinball Clements, I did an interview with him. And after the interview, he hugged me. And I'm like, where can you get hugged by a CFL Hall of Famer, all time Argonaut like Mike Pinball Clement? He's such a great ambassador, not just for the Argonauts, but for the Canadian Football League.
He is one of the best ambassadors of all time in the Canadian Football League and the game of football. A super passionate, super caring individual who knows that every CFL fan is precious and treats them like they're his own kids. I mean, he is such a special guy and has been like that, throughout his playing days, throughout his coaching days, throughout his front office days. He is a treasure, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And just two quick questions left for Rick, and we'll wrap this up. Is do you like the direction of where the CFL is heading and possible expansion in the next 5 years? Do you see any?
I think the CFL is heading in a good place. There are some challenges, mainly with other sports league. The NFL is always going to be there, and it's the monolith of pro football on this planet. But with the USFL coming back, the XFL coming back, these two extra football leagues, if you can call them that. There's other ones, other spring leagues out there and other fall leagues that kind of take away, in some cases, some of the talent that the CFL would have normally seen in past years. That's probably the biggest challenge, and I'm really intrigued to see how the CFL is going to combat that, because if you're an American player, especially, you have a few more options now, as opposed to, geez, if I don't make the NFL, I can go to the CFL. Now it's, man, I can't make the NFL. Well, now I have option A, B, C. And the CFL is not necessarily option A in this case. Sometimes it is options not on the table because the player doesn't want to move to Canada. So that, I think, is the biggest challenge. I do like where it's going in terms of, the CFL front office has kind of identified that this is an entertainment industry. They've known that for eons, obviously, but how do we make this game more exciting year in and year out? We're seeing that with some of the rule changes that have been implemented over the last number of years. We're seeing that with just the social scene around the Canadian Football League. I know they're trying to get to a younger audience, and that's going to take some time because they lost maybe a generation or two, especially in the kind of the blackout era, if you will.
Oh yeah, I remember.
In terms of expansion, yeah, in terms of expansion, this is a toughie because this you really need two, maybe even three people to tango. I think the CFL wants to expand, but it has to be careful in going through that expansion. And I think we can all agree that Atlantic Canada is going to be that place, we think, eventually. The issue is kind of twofold. Number one, you need an owner or ownership group that has deep pockets that can potentially sustain some losses, especially in the early going. And part of that is the stadium and the infrastructure that goes around housing, being the home of a Canadian Football League franchise. It's not easy. I mean, you can't just snap your fingers and there's a stadium and there's a team. It takes a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of work. So in 5 years, yeah, I don't know. If 5 years ago, I would have said maybe 10 years. I'm not confident in saying 5 years at all. I really need to see someone say, hey, I want to own a team. Like, let's put one in Atlantic Canada already and make this a 10-team league. We've been hearing that in terms of what the CFL hopes to do and what we as fans would want the CFL or this league to be. But I'm not seeing the most important part, and that is the owner or the ownership group kind of stepping forward to say, let's make this happen.
Well said, Rick, as well. We're going to wrap this up. Where can my audience follow you on social media, Rick? And your morning show, Good Morning on CHML 900.
Yeah, social is basically all the same. At Rick Zamperin on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. Yes, I'm there as well, making a fool out of myself. And the show, yeah, it's called Good Morning Hamilton. You can hear it weekday mornings from 5:30 to 9 on 900 CHML, 900CHML.com. You can download it for free on the Radio Player Canada app. Listen on your smart speaker, your phone, your tablet, your laptop, or however you want to consume the show. We greatly appreciate everyone who tunes in each and every morning and makes our morning a special place to be.
And what are you looking forward to this Friday the most about the Hamilton Winnipeg game, which will be 8:30 kickoff?
I'm looking forward to potentially a Ticats win. I don't know if it's going to materialize, but I'm just looking forward to the league starting up again, the games mattering again, or at least meaning something in the win-loss column and that points column, and just seeing how not only the Ticats team, but each team kind of responds to the ups and downs of the season. That really is what makes sports and pro sports so fun. It's the ultimate reality TV. We have no idea what's going to happen. We could convince ourselves to have a thought of this team's going to be good and this team is probably going to struggle, and then we're surprised by one or the other or both. And again, that's why it makes it so enjoyable. So I'm just looking forward to the ups and downs and the excitement that 2023 is going to bring.
How long is the fifth quarter show normally on CHML after a game?
Fifth quarter is an hour long. So yeah, the way it works, we have kickoff. The game goes about. It's roughly the average game nowadays is about 2 hours 45 minutes or so. There's a half-hour post-game show that the Ticats offer on the Ticats Audio Network, and then I'm on the air half hour after the game ends for an hour. So the post-game show is an hour, and really you're getting about a 90-minute post-game show because the Ticats have their 30-minute post-game. My show, the fifth quarter, is an hour, so you get the the best of both worlds. The Ticats Audio Network talks to Coach Orlando Steinauer, talks to a player of the game, talk amongst themselves about how they think the game unfolds, and then I jump on air on 900 CHL with the fifth quarter, talk about the game, and then just invite all Ticats fans and CFL fans to talk about the game, offer their thoughts on the player of the game, and just talk CFL football. It's great to do each and every week.
Are you going to be in Toronto for the June 18th game, or do you do all the fifth quarter shows at the studio?
So all the fifth quarter shows are done at the studio. Yeah, it would be
Okay.
fantastic to do them at the stadiums, plural, because Toronto is easily accessible. That is for sure. But yeah, they're back at the studio. It's on Facebook Live as well on CHML's Facebook page. So I set up the cameras and everyone can stare at my mug and consume the fifth quarter, and we have a good time.
Okay. Hey, Rick, I want to say thank you so much for coming on today, season 6, episode 8. This is my 283rd episode, and I
Nice.
apologize for some of the Wi-Fi issues, but hey, a podcast is only as great as its guests, and I've been very lucky in the last 3.5 years doing this show. And this will air on WQEE 99.1 FM in Georgia as well, and that they like my Canadian content, and especially the CFL. They're huge fans of the football league here in down in Georgia.
Hey, that's great to hear. Hello to all the people in Georgia.
Yes, and Rick, again, I want to say thank you so much for coming on here, and I'm looking forward to the Argonauts opener against those Hamilton Tiger Cats on Sunday, June 18th at 7 p.m. at BMO Field, TSN, or on the Tiger Cats Audio Network, or TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan, who's another good guy as well.
Absolutely. That'll be Father's Day. So let's hope we're celebrating a Ticats win on Father's Day. I know you'll think otherwise.
Yeah, I'm attending the game as a fan, so go Argos. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to a great CFL season. And Rick, again, thank you for coming on and talking to us about the 2023 Hamilton Tiger Cats.
You
All
got
right,
it.
Rick.
My pleasure. Have me back anytime. Happy to do so.
Next time we have you on, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the Maple Leafs going into next year. Okay. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed season 6, episode 8 with Rick Zamperin. He is the morning host of Good Morning Hamilton, weekdays from 5:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. And also, he is the host of the Tiger Cats post game show, the fifth quarter on CHML 900 as well. The Hamilton Tiger Cats open up their regular season on the road this Friday night at Winnipeg at 8:30. Then Sunday, June 18th, they're in Toronto for the Argonauts home opener at 7 o'clock at BMO Field. And then the Tiger Cats home opener, I believe, will be Friday, June 23rd at 7 o'clock against the Montreal Alouettes as well. And you guys can get tickets for the Tiger Cats through tigercats.ca as well. Guys, before we wrap up this show, I did an Grey Cup champion and wide receiver from the Toronto Argonauts about a week and a half ago with Curley Gittins Jr. Just bear with me, guys, and I'll play the interview right now. Here at Alumni Stadium at the University of Guelph. I have a special guest with me this morning from the Toronto Argonauts training camp. He was a member of the Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts last year, and he's also a former Laurier Golden Hawk. For yourself as an individual and winning the Grey Cup with the Toronto Argonauts?
Obviously, the goal going into any season is to, ultimately win the last game, and that's what we did. And, so I'm looking forward to this year. Because past years in the past, I'm looking forward to a new year.
Okay, before we get to the 2023 season, what did you remember the most about that Grey Cup win against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers?
Two things: the weather and us winning it. So.
Okay. What are your thoughts on McLeod Bethel Thompson, who's now in the USFL, and Chad Kelly's taken over as the starting quarterback for the Toronto Argonauts?
What do you mean?
Chad Kelly will battle.
Everyone's progressing pretty well. We're working together. We're learning the system very well. And I feel like we're moving at a really good rate. Eagles get out there. And I'm just excited to, play some football this year.
How excited are you to be back with the Argonauts now for another couple of years with your new contract as well?
I'd love to spend my whole career with one team. Right now, I got the next few years with Toronto. I'm looking forward to it.
What are your thoughts on the Argonauts training camp here so far and the facilities here at the University of Guelph?
First off, Guelph's got amazing training camp here, and we got a lot of talented players here. At the Argos training camp, and at every position too. So it's been a battle, and it's fun to see new faces and new talents around. They just try to work and get better every single day.
And you got 2 preseason games coming up soon. I believe May 27th at Hamilton, and then June 1st here against Ottawa. Just quick thoughts on the preseason games coming up.
That's just another chance. That's another opportunity to play football. We're all here. Besides, it's just opportunity to play football that we've met since being here in training camp. So I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, it's just just another opportunity to play football, make some plays, and celebrate with the guys.
And what did you do with your Grey Cup last year when you guys
I just came to Canada. My dad still lives there, so my family lives there. So I brought it back. I was able to kind of show what
never been to an Argos game yet at BMO Field or even here for training camp?
We're an exciting football team.
All right, guys. Looks. Oops. I know it's still early, but you feel this
Trying to get better, and we can't compare the rosters yet because the set yet. But like I said earlier, we have some talented players, and we're not worried about last year. We're not really worried about the future of this year. We're just kind of worried about taking it day by day and getting better as a whole group. And that's something, like I said, I'm looking forward to.
Okay, and just quick thoughts on the coaching staff, and I believe most of them are back from last year's team.
Yeah, everyone's back. And, one thing that's good is continuity, and the fact that we got our whole coaching staff back. It's, speaks to the culture that that we set, within the organization, and it's a big plus for us. Like I said, continuity is the biggest thing. Consistency.
And one other thing too, as well, Laurier Golden Hawks. Do you still keep in touch with the school and the football program there as well?
100%. That's something we're grouping into the player I am today, and I was just there a few weeks ago because we had the football gala, and I'll always be part of the football program. Once a Golden Hawk, always a Golden Hawk.
What was your favorite moment from Warford Laurier? And we'll wrap this up. Where can my audience find you on social media to follow you?
Wrap it up, you said?
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments was probably us winning the Yates Cup. It's pretty good moments there, and they were all special. And I'm grateful for Logan football, and you can find me on Instagram at curly.junior, Twitter Curly G, and all that fun stuff.
All right, well, Curly, I want to say thank you so much for coming on.
No, I appreciate
I
you.
really appreciate it.
Yep.
And I want to say continued success for yourself and the Argonauts in 2023. And I'm a first-time season ticket holder, so you'll see me down at BMO Field a lot this year as a fan or covering the team as a media as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and keep doing your thing on this podcast. This is awesome.
Thank you so much, Curly. Curly Gettish Jr. from the 2022 Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, that clip was courtesy of my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the like notification. And as well, again, I want to say thank you to Curly Gettish Jr. for the Toronto Argonauts allowing me to interview players during training camp here at the University of Guelph as well. Anyways, guys, my next podcast show will be this Wednesday, June 7th at 12 p.m., Season 6, Episode 9, with a very special guest. His name is Mark Cullen. He's the president of Barry Cullen. He's also the son of the founder of Barry, the late Barry Cullen. So Mark's going to come on and talk some GM cars and about his family business in Barry Cullen Chevrolet. And Barry Cullen Chevrolet is also the official sponsor of Live with CDP Sports Talk as well. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Mark about the family business, Barry Cullen Chevrolet, and about his late father, Barry Cullen, who played some NHL hockey with the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Detroit Red Wings, and in the AH, the Sabres came into the NHL and they at 8 o'clock. Game 2, Vegas won the first game 5-2. I expect Florida to come out and play a much better game 2 tonight in Vegas. So that will be 8 o'clock as well. We're going to wrap this show up soon, guys. Just bear with me. Also, just to let you know, my guest Saturday at 6 o'clock, Chelsea Ray, I had to reschedule it with her as I had some technical issues with my internet and cable on Saturday. So Chelsea Ray, who is a country singer, songwriter in the Nashville, Tennessee area, will be on my show this Sunday night at 6 o'clock. So that's Sunday at 6 o'clock. Chelsea Ray will be on to talk about her music career, songwriting, and how she got into the music industry as well. As always, Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Thank you, everybody, for watching on live stream as well. You guys can also check out my website, beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame. All my digital content and all my previous podcast episodes are on there as well. As always, Live with CDP Sports Talk is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles. or give them a call at 519-824-0210 or email them at info@barrycollin.com. Speaking of barrycollin.com as well, you can spring into summer at 3.99% financing for up to 60 months. For eligible Costco members, can receive a $750 bonus on select SUVs such as the 2023 Blazer, Traverse, and Equinox as well. So again, check out Barry Collin Chevrolet for that deal with certain SUVs and for eligible Costco members as well. You guys can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP. I have now 1,300 followers on TikTok. I want to say thank you to every one of those 1,300 for following me on TikTok. I post a lot of content there as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting such as myself, check out StreamYard.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk podcast. The audio version is available on iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Stitcher, and Tuned In, and weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, and Metro Atlanta, the home of Southern talk in sports. Finally, you guys can email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpalme19@gmail.com, or you can text me at the show at 519-820-7188 as well. Again, I want to say thank you to my guest today, Rick Zamperin, who's the longtime host of Good Cat games after their games on the road or at home as well, for coming on today. Again, I hope you guys can tune in to season 6, episode 9 of Live with CDP Sports Talk this Wednesday at 12 o'clock again with Mark Cullen, the president of Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Looking forward to it. I hope everybody has a great night. Again, I apologize for any Wi-Fi issues. I'm not sure if they're on my end or on StreamYard's issue, but I think overall we did a very good job with this episode today as well. Just give me about 15 minutes. I'll have this episode downloaded to all my audio platforms as well. I hope everybody has a great evening, enjoys the Stanley Cup game number 2 tonight, Florida, Vegas at 8 o'clock. The NBA Finals will resume, I believe, Wednesday night back in Miami after the Heat's 111-108 win over the Denver Nuggets yesterday. Again, thanks to Rick Zamperin for coming on, and thank you everybody for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports Talk, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph, and weeknights at 8 o'clock Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM. Have a great evening, everybody, and we'll see you Wednesday at 12 o'clock for Live with CDP Sports Talk with my guest, Mark Cullen, the president of Barry Cullen Chevrolet.